All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is August 2nd here. We got a full MLB slate to jump into for today. We're gonna go through each and every game. I'm gonna give you my lean or leans on the games like I always do, but all my final plays, so that I'm actually rolling with myself. If you want to ride with me, or if you do want to fade me, those plays will be in the pinned comment. Yesterday, we go 2-2, which I just feel like we've been doing so much as of late. It doesn't kill us, but it's nothing to write home about either. But nonetheless, the Rays money line comes through for us, and the Cubs money line come through, and then the Mets go to extra innings and lose to the Royals there. I think it was 10 innings played, they lose 7-6. And then the Padres Rockies, which was a late addition to the final play slip here, under 12.5. They finish at 13, 8-5. So yeah, the late throw in that we wanted and we threw in there ends up losing and making it a 2-2 night. If we just kept it with kind of our original 3 plays that we wanted to roll with, it would have been a profitable night. But nonetheless, guys, you can't cry over spilled milk. We do look to bounce back today. Our ride of the day also does not come through, coming in from Caldi. It was Jorge Soler, over 1.5 bases, 4+ money, albeit, but he only finishes with 1 base. Gotta face the womp there, guys. Shout out to Caldi, though. I did like this pick, jumped on board. Unfortunately, does not come through. If you do want to be the ride of the day, all you gotta use is hashtag ride of the day in the comments. Give me an absolute certified banger of a pick, and I'll be jumping on board with 1 person, and then you get a shout out in the next video, win or loss. If you win, we celebrate. We might give you some sound effects. If you lose, you gotta face the womp. So I guess enter at your own risk. But like I said, guys, we got a full MLB slate. I do like some spots here as well. So let's go ahead and jump into it. But first, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well. You guys have been going crazy as of late. Let's see if we can truly run up the likes in today's video. So if you're watching, and you're sitting there being like, you know what, I don't usually like the videos, just hit the like button today. It's so easy for you to do. It takes 2 seconds, but it does a lot for the channel and the community we're building, which obviously I care about even more, right? So go ahead and hit that like button, guys, and hit that subscribe button as well. And let's go ahead and jump into game number 1, in which we're looking at the Braves taking on the Angels here. Atlanta winning yesterday 5-1. On the mound for them today is Yonny Chirinos. He hasn't been great this season. You don't really know what you're going to get from him. He's only had 1 real good start, going up against Lucas Giolito of the Angels here, who didn't have the best outing when it came to his first start for the LA Angels last time out against Toronto either. 5 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, not necessarily a stud out there either. So I do think that I'm going to look at this opportunity to take the Braves here, because I think that you're not really going to get many opportunities during the season or anything like that when you get the Braves at minus 140-ish. So give me the Braves on the money line here. They've been absolutely crushing righties as of late. Last 5 games, averaging almost 9 runs, batting nearly 360 on 10 hits here against righties, and the Angels have struggled against righties. So though we have 2 fairly to say it nicely, pitchers on the mound today, I do think that this is a spot in which we can trust the better offense, which I think you got to give that one to the Braves, right? In terms of the total, though, we're sitting at 10.5, and now I'm talking about, oh wow, getting to these bad pitchers, like obviously this is going to be a high-scoring game, right? I think it is going to be a high-scoring game, but 10.5 is asking for an awful lot. So I'm going to slightly lean towards the under here, because I think this could be a high-scoring game, which could be like a 6-3 type game, which obviously one team carries the weight there. So when I say high-scoring, I mean more or less the Atlanta offense kind of getting to Giolito and doing their thing, whereas I don't necessarily think the Angels are going to go out there regardless of who they're playing against, and they're going to drop like a huge number on them. It's been 5 games since they've scored even more than 4 runs. So give me the under as well, but my main lean is probably going to be the value there at Atlanta on the money line, because this could easily be like it was yesterday. You know what I mean? Atlanta being severe favorites in this one. All right, Pittsburgh taking on Detroit here. On the mound for Pittsburgh, you're looking at Beto, who has been decent over his last 5 here, 2.8 ERA in his last 5, going up against Eduardo Rodriguez, who has been pretty good. Obviously, home away splits could be a little bit different. Coming back from injury, not as good as he was, but still want to give him a little bit credit where it is due. Eduardo Rodriguez having a good season there. In terms of what I'm looking at in this game, though, I don't really love a side. Maybe I lean towards the Tigers just because I do think they have the better pitcher on the mound today, but I do take a peek at the under. You could look at the last 5 and the last 10 game splits here, and these two teams are just going absolutely downhill when it comes to batting righties as the Tigers or batting lefties as the Pirates, and you have a total here of 8.5. So I'm going to look at the under in this one as well. Even looking at what these two teams over the season for their runs for, Detroit averaging 3.9 runs for per game, then Pittsburgh averaging 4.1. You add those two up, you're not looking at an over quite there, right? So whether or not this becomes a final play, keep an eye on the pinned comment, but I am kind of trusting the fact that these two pitchers, you could make the argument of trending in the right direction, whereas the offenses are doing the exact opposite. So give me the under 8.5 in terms of my main lean on this game. And like I said, I'm just going to kind of back Rodriguez if you were to ask me for a money line play. All right, next game, we have Washington taking on the Brewers here. Washington getting the win in game number 1 of this series, but Milwaukee bounces back, winning 6-4 yesterday. Freddie Peralta, I think, went 6 innings pitched. Not the best, but got the job done, obviously, there as well. He was the Prize Picks taco as well. Wade Miley on the mound for Milwaukee today, who's been pretty good as of late. In his last 5 years, he's got a 1.2 ERA, and the team is 4-1 when he does get the start. Mackenzie Gore also, I guess you could say, trending in the right direction from a stats perspective, but if you really look at his start, it's like good start, terrible start, decent start, terrible start. So he is kind of all over the place as of right now, but what I like to see here, especially being, which is my lean on the Milwaukee side here, is the fact that this splits against lefties for the offenses here. Now, both of these pitchers are lefties, which is why I'm saying that. In terms of this season, you'd look at it and say, wow, Washington way better against lefties than Milwaukee, right? Washington on the season, again, 5 runs per game, batting .275. And then in terms of Milwaukee, only 3 runs per game, batting .229. You're like, okay, Washington bats lefties way better, right? Then you kind of look at that from a last 10 games. So what have you done for me lately perspective here? And it legitimately flips on its head. Now you have Milwaukee batting nearly .280 against lefties and Washington batting .234. So give me the hotter team here. I'm going to lean towards Milwaukee. And when I say hotter team, I mean, they kind of cooled off. Milwaukee actually seemed like they were turning the corner for a second, but they've played Cincinnati, they played Atlanta, and though they do get a bunch of wins against Cincinnati, still like they had a series of Atlanta, then Cincinnati, then Atlanta. Like Milwaukee hasn't had a cakewalk of games as of late, so I'm going to say they're a hotter team, definitely a better team either way, and they're batting lefties better than the Washington Nationals right now. Give me them. And then in terms of the total, I guess slight lean towards the under 8.5. I think that if both these pitchers are actually pitching better as of late than they have on the season, maybe, we can keep this to like a similar game to what we saw yesterday, but maybe a couple runs off, right? Which was 6-4. Maybe it's like game number 1, only roles reversed, 5-3 type of thing, and say just under the radar there. All right, guys, before we continue on, I do want to pay the bills here and talk about Outlier. If you have not seen Outlier, if you have not used Outlier, if you have not heard about Outlier, well, today's your lucky day. You can check it out, guys, for free for 7 days. It is the best sports betting research tool out there for player props, game picks, anything under the sun, guys. They have it. In fact, let's get in there and we can check out Outlier. I can kind of walk you through what we're seeing here. This is the player props tab, which has every single player prop and their alternate line under FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, and BetMGM, okay? You can go through and look at things. Obviously, they have all of the odds here. If these are too juicy for you, you can go ahead and add some minimum odds and check it out. All right, Kerry Carpenter. These odds aren't all that terrible. In fact, you see Caesars at -170. Maybe there's some value in MGM and -150 here on DraftKings, but you can click in. You can go ahead and analyze this from his season's perspective. You can see how many the percent that he's hit it, his last 10, last 20, head-to-head, that type of thing. You can go versus pitcher. What is his average against righties? What is his average against Beto in the past? And if you do like this pick, all you gotta do is click DraftKings right here. It'll pull up a QR code if you want to do it from your phone, or you can click open in browser and it's literally going to find this pick on DraftKings. Look, no hands. I don't have to touch it. It's going to put it in my bet slip and you can add your play right there. If I was logged in, it'd be as simple as that, guys. Go check out Outlier again. It's not just for player props. You can do game picks, look at team trends, pitching trends, all that. And also they have a trends tab, which is really cool, in which it identifies trends that are in the market right now. Matt Olson has exceeded 1.5 total bases in 7 of his last 8 games at home after a win, averaging 5.2 bases per game for plus 105 odds. Really, really cool, guys. They do the heavy lifting and the digging for you. If you've not checked out Outlier, I highly suggest you do so. 7 days free. It's an absolute steal, guys. Go check it out. The only risk you have, and I've said it before, right? The only risk you have, if you think you're going to go in there being like a little sleazeball, being like, I'm going to get it for 7 days, not going to pay for the rest or anything like that, which, by the way, it's $19.99 per month. But you're going to go in there being like, yeah, I'm not going to pay for this. And then you're like, oh, crap, I'm in love with this tool. And you realize how quickly it pays for itself. And you get stuck with it, per se. But I absolutely love the tool, guys. I wouldn't push something that I don't enjoy myself. But let's go ahead and get the train back on the tracks, and let's get to the next game. All right, we have Houston taking on the Guardians here. Houston getting the close win yesterday. They win 2-0. Valdez goes 9 innings for the squad here. They also got game 1 here in this series, so they've won both of them. Maybe Cleveland sneaks one out, but we don't know where the odds are at as of right now. No total and no money line or run line odds to look at because we don't know who's pitching for Houston. So keep an eye on the pinned comment to see if we end up rolling with anything in this spot. But I will say, Tanner Beebe on the mound for the Guardians here, who he's looked pretty good as of late. A 1.2 ERA over his last 5 with a 4-1 record for the team when he does start here. Then also, in terms of a hitting perspective, it's not like Houston goes out there and absolutely crushes righties. They do bat well against righties, but it's not them that I'd be fearful of backing Tanner Beebe. So maybe, just maybe, we have an underdog spot here when it comes to the Guardians, but again, we don't even know who's pitching for Houston. So once we shore up those question marks, we may have some final plays in this game, but keep an eye on the pinned comment for any of that. All right, Colorado taking on the Padres. I think we can clearly just walk right through this one pretty quickly. San Diego is going to be my play at any sort of potential parlay throw-in, not as an individual bet, as they are minus 225, which makes sense. They have Joe Musgrove on the mound going up against a Colorado team that just is not all that great. So I do lean Padres, but again, it's got to be with something else. Minus 225, way beyond the juice that you or myself should be willing to pay for an individual play here. In terms of a total 11.5, it's kind of bit us in the ass, or did bite us in the ass yesterday, but I do still lean towards the under 11.5 because, I think that it's going to be a one-sided affair. Unless the Padres go out there and score 12 runs themselves, I do not necessarily think that this over hits. So I'm going to lean towards the under 11.5. All right, Seattle taking on Boston here. Boston gets the win yesterday in game number 2 of the series. Brian Bayo went up against Bryce Miller, and it was a 6-4 game. We like the under in yesterday's game. It actually ended up going over. I do like the under again today. You have Logan Gilbert on the mound, who's kept the ERA relatively low in his last 5 starts. You throw out the game against Toronto, he hasn't let up more than 2 runs. That one game, which was I think either 2 or 3 starts ago, he did let up 5 runs through 5 innings, which is obviously going to kind of tank the ERA. And then you have Cutter Crawford, who has been pitching way above his means here for the Red Sox as of late as well. So I do think that both these pitchers can do their job. I wish we were looking at an 8.5 total. We're looking at 8, so I still do lean towards the under, but I will throw in the caveat. You guys know I'm all about keeping it like fully transparent here. You're looking at 2 teams that do bat righties fairly well. Red Sox on the season have, and then Seattle as of late have. So 2 little pieces of context there that, if you do want to hinder the pick of the under, then go for it based on that knowledge. But what I will say is I do like the Red Sox a lot on the money line here. You got to trust Cutter Crawford to continue to pitch well if that's obviously going to come through. But for plus 110 odds, I do not think that you can miss out on that. And again, we're still waiting for like that 4th loss in a bunch, right? They're 1-3 in their last 4. They lost 3 games in a row. Red Sox bounced back yesterday, but we're still looking for another loss and another loss to be able to be like, all right, Red Sox fade time, right? Because they're not out of the woods yet. And I hope you guys know I'm like trying to break that down in like simple terms, I guess, every day with the wagon wheels and all that type of thing. But this is a Red Sox team that's going to win a bunch of games in a row and lose a bunch of games in a row, seemingly more often than not based on this season. So what I'm looking for is sort of that start to the clump of losses, which 3 losses in a row was right around that what we might be seeing here. Doesn't end up actually happening. They end up getting a win yesterday. So if they lose again, now you're looking at 4 losses in the last 5 games. You can start to say, okay, maybe this Red Sox team's ready for some regression, but we have our eye pretty close to that. But nonetheless, guys, trusting the Red Sox here, plus 110. And then in terms of the total, I do like the under. All right, Miami taking on Philly here. Philly getting the win yesterday. In fact, they won both games to start this series. They win 4-2 in game number 1 and then 3-1 in game number 2. Zach Wheeler is on the mound for the Phillies, who quite honestly is one of the more unlucky. If you look at his ERA and everything like that compared to his FIP and expected FIP, it's like, which is fielding independent pitching. It's like kind of crazy. This guy is a very good pitcher. Going up against Braxton Garrett today, who has been good as well. Had a good start, his most recent start, but it was against Detroit, so I want to throw in that caveat there. But you look at these hitters versus starting throwing hand, right? In the last 10 here, Miami kind of struggling against righties. Only 3 runs per game, batting .237, and then Phillies 6 runs per game, over 6 runs per game, 6 runs per 9, I should say, against lefties with an average of .233. So give me Zach Wheeler, who I do think is, you know, stats independent, a very good pitcher, and has been pitching well, but has been very unlucky this season in terms of, I guess, run support, and obviously you could make the argument that errors and whatnot. But for example, he pitched 7 innings. Again, this was back maybe 2 or 3 starts ago, right? 7 innings pitched, 1 earned run with 8 strikeouts and 1 walk against the Guardians, and Philly lost 1-0. You know what I mean? So he has been pitching well, just not getting the run support. So give me them on the money line here at -134. In terms of the total, 7.5 just seems like too low to miss out on a potential over here. But guys, I've said that about pretty much every game, or definitely yesterday. I've said this in every game this series about the over, and 2 unders have hit. So I'm probably staying away from it. It was going to be an overlook for me, but if I do like the idea of Zach Wheeler being able to wheel out there, then like I'm not going to back an over as well. So I'm kind of passing from this, but it was a slight initial lean towards the over. Now I'm kind of off of it altogether. All right, New York taking on Tampa Bay here. You got Garrett Cole going up against Shane McClanahan, who McClanahan hasn't been the typical McClanahan as of late. He's got a 3.2 ERA in his last 5 years. Garrett Cole continuing to deal. I do think that, you know, this Rays team is back per se, right? But in this spot, I don't necessarily like the pitching matchup. I do think that Cole has obviously been pitching far better. So, I don't want to lean Yankees because I still think that this Rays team is back and they can put up runs against anyone, but Yankees versus lefties as of late have been absolutely on fire. In their last 5 year, batting almost .350 against lefties and keeping that average above .300 against lefties in their last 10. So you look at that, it's like, okay, fine. Maybe the Yankees is the play here, and it could be. If I were to make a money line play in this game, it may be the Yankees, but that thought process and just thought in general of the Rays are back could be what kind of keeps me off of the side of this game. One thing that I do like, and maybe it's too square, maybe it's too cliche, but you have 2 absolute studs on the mound today. I'm looking at the under now. It is down there at 7.5. I get it. But we still can see, you know, that this Rays offense isn't totally back, right? And we've seen 2 games that hit this under already in this series. The Yankees offense is kind of nowhere to be found, you know, in terms of big number run games. I gave you the average that they've been hitting lefties well, right? But overall, they're not necessarily scoring this boatload of runs. So I look at this and say, okay, you could have a game where it's a back and forth grinded out game and still have like a 4-3 finish. So give me the under 7.5 in this one. It may be square. Maybe I'm reading and getting the flashy pitcher names, you know, too easily or getting swayed by that. But nonetheless, I can't see a world in which I would lean the over in this spot. That's for damn sure. All right, Toronto taking on Baltimore. I'm done betting Toronto. I'm done considering Toronto, leaning Toronto. Screw them. Baltimore's the better team. They win both games so far in the series. They win yesterday 13-3. Grayson Rodriguez, I don't like backing him. I doubt this becomes a final play, but I'm sure as hell not going to throw Toronto in there as a final play. You will not catch me typing Blue Jays money line as a final play in the pinned comment. So give me Baltimore on the money line. Total we're looking at is 8.5. I don't necessarily think that they're going to have a 16 total run game scored again, but I could see this being an over with Grayson Rodriguez on the mound, as well as Kikichi, who obviously he's been pretty good, but he will have his blow-up moments at times, but pitched well against Toronto this season, or sorry, Baltimore this season, but Baltimore continues to get wins. So I lean Toronto mainly in this one for +110. I like that spot. I just cannot get myself to pull the trigger on Toronto anymore. All right, guys, if you consider yourself finding or wanting to find ways, I should say, of continuing to support the channel and all that, because we do have a good product around here, guys, in terms of the production value and, you know, the consistency and waking up super early before the sun's up sometimes to get these videos out. If you do want to show your support and you know, support me in a way, guys, make sure to check out fademe.store. We have tons of new products and new designs over there right now, and I'm putting so much work into this, guys, and honestly, I appreciate the handful of you guys that are supporting as of late, but I'm going to call you guys out. Hey, if you do want to support even further, this is your chance, and I like giving back. We're doing promos, we're doing discounts, everything like that, right? Well, today I'm going to do what I did. I think it was the second day that we launched the store, right? I'm going to go through and refund someone's order today. I'm going to pick one random order that we get, and we're only getting a handful of orders, right? Like, this isn't a multi-million-dollar brand now after like a week and a half, 2 weeks into launch, right? We're only getting a handful of orders, guys, so if you do want to place an order, I'm picking one person at random and refunding that order today, so you're gonna get your product shipping, all that completely free. I get your email when the order comes through too, so I'll reach out that way. But if you do want to check it out, support me, but also get some fire merch, guys, check out the store, fademe.store. I love this material. It's thick, it's comfortable, it's kind of got that washed look and washed color as well, so it is really cool, and it survives washes, which is awesome. I've had this Fade Me. This is the first Fade Me sample that we got, and it's been a damn long time, and this thing is still kicking, still looking fresh, matching the lights, matching the Celtics hat here as well, guys. Go check out the Fade Me store if you do want to support what we're doing here. It is a great way to do that, and you know, we put a lot of work into this, and I'm so excited to see where it goes. Like, so excited. It's my little baby Fade Me, right? So go check it out, guys. That link is in the pinned comment. All right, we got St. Louis taking on Minnesota here. Minnesota gets the win yesterday, 3-2. They have Joe Ryan on the mound today, who I am going to back. -126, I think, is a bargain for the Twins here as they go up against Dakota Hudson on the mound for St. Louis here. Minnesota just been playing, you know, better baseball. Even in some of their losses, they're keeping it close, and I'm willing to rule out. I've said this in the last few videos. It's like that sweep against Kansas City, which they got swept, so they were the dustpan, right? It's like, you know what? You rule it out. It was an outlier. You're not going to get swept by Kansas City. If Minnesota played Kansas City again, I'd reckon that, you know, they'd probably go and sweep them. So you're looking at this Minnesota team that, if you throw out that they have been playing decent baseball, okay? So give me them on the money line, -126, going up against, again, Dakota Hudson. And Minnesota batting well against righties in their last 5, almost 6 runs per 9 here, averaging 8 hits and 266 average, up against a struggling St. Louis team, under 2 runs per 9 here against righties, with a 210 average in their last 5 versus righties. So give me Minnesota. Then in terms of the total, you're looking at 8.5. I can't really see this being that high scoring of a game, especially when you look at where these offenses have been in terms of a consistency level. Nowhere to be found necessarily, so I'm going to lean the under as well. I think this could be a very similar game to yesterday, a 3-2 win. It could be like a 4-2. There's a lot of wiggle room here when you have an 8.5 total with these two teams and the way their offenses have been playing. All right, Cubs taking on Cincinnati. Remember in yesterday's video when I was like, hey, these odds are a little weird. Why are the Cubs so heavily favored, right? They win 20-9, so yeah, I guess Vegas knew what they were doing, and we jumped on board. We pulled the trigger on the Cubs. Easy, no sweat win. 20-9 was the total there. I'm leaning towards the under right away because these teams have to have some regression after that, so I lean towards the under 8.5. We don't have it updated on the screen, but we do now have starting pitchers, and we have odds, so Cubs -138 is the money line here. Cincinnati for +118 on the money line, and then the total sitting at 10. I'm leaning towards the under because I do think that, you know, we saw a 6-5 game. I get it. Then a 20-9 game, and you're like, all right, these two teams scored a bunch of runs, right? Not today. There's got to be some regression. In terms of a side lean, I do look at Cincinnati here. Brandon Williamson on the mound for them, going up against Drew Smyly, who's got a 3.8 ERA in his last 5. His last 4 starts have not looked all that great. Like, that ERA over his last 5 is including 5 starts ago, his most, you know, that fringe 5th start there, a 5 innings pitch, 0 earned run game. So other than that, it's been 7 earned runs through 3 2/3, 3 earned runs through 3 2/3, 4 earned runs through 4, and then 5 earned runs through 6 innings. He has not been pitching very well, whereas Williamson actually pitching well. I don't love backing the guy, but he is pitching well. In their last 10 games here, Cincinnati also 310 against lefties, whereas the Cubs sitting at a nice 230. So if this wasn't plus money, I probably would consider just staying off it altogether, but you're looking at plus money for a Cincinnati team that all signs point towards a bounce back win type of a spot today. So give me Cincinnati on the money line. In terms of a total, 10 runs, like I said, under is going to be my lean. All right, Texas taking on the Chicago White Sox here. Texas only minus 140 on the money line. I say only because I do think that is a factor of Dylan Cease being on the mound for the White Sox here, who is starting. I mean, he had a bad start against Cleveland last out, but was starting to kind of turn the corner and be that stud that we know that he is. Texas trotting out Dane Dunning, who's also been pitching decently as of late. He has one bad start in his last 5, and he got shelled by the Dodgers here. But I lean towards Texas because I do want this offense to continue to sort of ramp up here. And I think that's what they're going to do now. I want to give credit where it's due that, or not credit, I guess. I want to give a sort of an equalizer where it's due that both these teams have struggled versus righties, which both these pitchers are righties. Both offenses have struggled towards righties as of late through the last 5 and the last 10, right around that 200 mark for an average. But on the season, we know this power of the offense that Texas has. So at some point, I do believe this Texas offense comes out of their shell. Kind of thought it would happen yesterday. They got the win, but only scored 2 runs. Maybe against Dylan Cease today, they go out there and do it. And again, it's kind of only, I guess, a spot in which I'm looking at this saying, okay, you know what? I like the idea of Texas because minus 140, it's because Dylan Cease is on the mound. So again, like, good pitcher. I understand that this is an iffy spot, but you know, you're looking at a minus 186, I think, if you're not going up against Cease. So give me Texas on the money line here. And then in terms of the total, again, I think that Texas at some point is going to turn around, give me the over 8.5. And also, before we get on to the next game, I did want to say, like, Texas going out there getting Scherzer. Obviously, you got to, you have a good team already, and the pitching is there too. But going out there and really going out and shelling out to get a guy like Scherzer, this Texas team is kind of going all in, and they're not looking like they're kind of, sedentary and feeling okay with what they're doing. So, yeah, you know what? Shout out to them for going out there and getting him, because I do think that could be a good move for them. And speaking of Scherzer too, we have the Mets taking on Kansas City, and I will say, I don't even know if the Mets got necessarily what they should have for Scherzer, but nonetheless, guys, this isn't a trade talk show. We got the Mets taking on Kansas City. Mets letting us down. You know what? I want to drop it. I don't care if they went to extra innings. I don't care if they could have won the game, right? Quintana pitched a decent game. Screw it, guys. The Mets should have won that game yesterday. They lose to Kansas City. I don't think they do the same today, but we caught a big ol' L because of the Mets. But I think if they bounce back and win today, the only problem is they're minus 188. And after a loss, I'm not going to consider that for an individual play. In terms of a total, though, this is where an individual play could come in. I do like the under 9.5. You have Senga going up for the Mets here, has been pitching well over his last 5, and then you have no starter name for Kansas City, but it doesn't really matter because this Mets offense hasn't been on fire. I really don't necessarily care who's pitching for Kansas City because, again, this Mets offense hasn't been on fire. So I'm going to look at the Mets to be able to hold down Kansas City and cash in under here. I think this one stays in single digits as long as the Mets do kind of suppress Kansas City, who, as weird as it is, that offense has been scoring a decent amount of runs, but they've been going, 8 runs, 2 runs, 10 runs, 2 runs. Now they scored 7 runs. I think it is a regression spot for them as well. So give me the under 9.5 is probably the only individual play that I could consider in this game. But yeah, Kansas City I don't think wins 2 in a row against this Mets team. Minus 188 for the Mets, though, is not a price I'm willing to pay. All right, San Francisco taking on Arizona. Yesterday's game, San Francisco wins 4-3. We don't know who's on the mound for Arizona. We don't know if Logan Webb has been confirmed for San Francisco either. We do have odds, however. Obviously, we're looking at them here. We see San Francisco heavy favorites on the money line here. Total sitting at 8 runs. But again, we're not necessarily sure who is going for either one of these teams. So keep an eye on the pinned comment to see if we end up rolling with anything. Fidat is supposed to go tomorrow for Arizona, so I don't think he'll be pitching today. Obviously not Gallen or Nelson. Maybe you're looking at Kelly or Henry in this spot, but nonetheless, guys, keep an eye on the pinned comment, see what we roll with here. I do want to know who's pitching for Arizona before we consider going out there and throwing anything on the line. In terms of a total 8 runs, I think that this is a spot in which, it's a pretty good line. We've seen a 4-3 game and then a 4-3 game. Now you have 8 runs. I really can't kind of pull the trigger on anything total-wise without knowing the pitching, I guess the final pitchers as well. So apologies to blow through it and not really give you much here, but keep an eye on the pinned comment to see if we roll with anything. All right, Dodgers taking on Oakland. This doesn't happen often, guys. I mean, it's fair here, but the Dodgers are minus 300 against Oakland. So, you cannot really consider that. That's almost like out of parlay range as well, right? So, yes, I think the Dodgers win this game like they did yesterday. They have beat the O's. They have beat the A's here in 4 of their last 5 against one another. They win 73 yesterday. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't go again today. Gonsolin's on the mound for them, going up against Hogan Harris, who Hogan Stinky is a good nickname for him. But nonetheless, guys, there's nothing you can do in this game that's of value. Even LA -1.5 is almost -160, right? So it's like a lot of juice to be paying here, only to potentially be like surprised that Oakland keeps this game close, or hell, wins the game, right? So I'm not really considering much in terms of the total. We're looking at 9 runs. Maybe you could consider the over if this Dodgers team's offense is going to continue to score a bunch of runs, but we are kind of removed from when they were scoring a bunch of runs. We're like 2 series past when they were scoring double digits every single game, right? Since then, their offense has kind of been shaky, but yeah, hate to close out the show with a game game and series in which doesn't have much value to a sports bettor, but nonetheless, here we are, guys, and that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you did like the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace out.